Choyo sambo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe trinle yarngoda pegye drolor zambe ze parchin palden lame shabla solvade. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsamanya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Karm Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsamanya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi. Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Munisha Sane Kar Uta Vardhani Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum. Dagi Jetsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu Su Gibe Shesan Dala Tendo Su Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo Su Tseji Nyingne Sowa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Visu Lekshune Yela Sambe Dode Malepa Bemel Hunge Drubra Jinge Lo Dorna Tingne Tsira Tamche Da Techi Pardune Kaba Tamche Tu Rese Kyamne Lama Keleme Tukje Chinge Dala Sikso So Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuje Rab Gongne Kudan Sunge Nawa Drame Tu Nyamsu Nyongwe Kesan Toprasho Kewa Kundu Yanda Drame Cheki Pela Longchechi Sadan Lamge Yönden Rabzone Dorje Change Koba Nyur Toba Shon Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tukdan Dagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Alu Makyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tukdan Dagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Alu Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha Om Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Svoha. スワハ。 Om Sange Chodon Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsochi Dage Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sange Druparesho Sange Chodon Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsochi Drola Pinchira Sange Druparesho Sange Chodan Tsogi Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapsuchi Dagi Jinso Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchira Sange Druparesho. Nel Buddha, nel Dharma e nel Sangha prendo rifugio fino all'illuminazione.
Good evening. I was trying to see from where I should begin. There was a master, teacher, who lived in Tibet, Geshe. So his name escapes me. Anyway, it wasn't Geshe Chakawa, it was another Geshe. Anyway, one day, he was in a ceremony in a monastery, and what would happen is that during the pujas and the ceremonies, when the offerings were given, they would often bring butter and tea and meat. They would bring food, and they would distribute it all among the monks. And during the ceremonies, the way in which the monks are seated in practically all monasteries, it follows a very precise hierarchy where the first who have arrived sit up front, and the last who have arrived sit in the back. And so with the food, what would happen sometimes is that if a family brought a certain amount of food at the end, maybe there wasn't so much left. They weren't able to divide it up perfectly, and so let's say the older, the elders, would be would receive a lot, and those who at the back a little. And so there was this geshe, and they were distributing the tupa and the butter. And as he saw that as he saw that the others in front of him were being served, a lot of attachment arose in him, and he had a lot of hunger, and he was worried, like, oh, maybe I won't get any, and he just couldn't take his eyes off of what was being given to the others, instead of staying there full of gratitude and patiently. And he realized what happened, what was happening, and then when they came to him to give him the offerings, he turned his bowl upside down, and he said, "I've already eaten with my eyes." And he specifically in that he didn't take any offerings. He didn't eat. So what did he did? I mean, we all have these processes where the thoughts take form, and we know that they're not always good thoughts. And every once in a while, we let ourselves be taken by these thoughts. Every once in a while, we're able to not follow them. But when we're able to do something concrete that opposes that type of thought, and it's not about being guilty, like for punishing myself, for having thought something negative, like, well, I'm not going to eat to punish myself. No, it's to stop that thought process. It's similar to the story of Geshe Ben Kungel. Let's remember that he, before entering the monastery in Lhasa, he was part of a criminal organized crime, like a gang. They would steal, and they would kidnap people. And this was in the southeast of Tibet, in the region of Kham, where it said that a man who doesn't know how to kill another man is not a real man. I mean, they're really, they're a bit cowboy. They're like the Tibetan cowboys. I mean, they're like that even today. A few years ago, so we were there with Rinpoche, and they told us that you can't go to this region where you want to go. You can't go because there's a little bit of a discussion going on. Maybe 15 people have been killed. So they in this region, they actually they harvest forage porcini mushrooms, and so they actually export them, and so so there was this kind of a fight about the mushrooms, and they don't discuss, let's say, among the villages. They start with their fists and end up with a knife, and so there was a kind of mushroom war in that period. So we weren't able to visit this region. All of this to give you an image of what Ben Kyungel was like. I mean, this big, strong man who was used to fighting, and he was really familiarized with violence. And at a certain point, he decided in his life to leave all of that and follow the religious, spiritual life. And so he left the life he had in Kham. He entered the monastery. I don't remember if it was Sera Ganden or Drepun. I think it was Sera in Lhasa. And one day he was called. Some time went by, and he was called to for a ceremony, like a puja, from a family, where they call on monks to do this kind of thing. So he was there in this family's house reciting this puja, and at a certain point there was a table, these Tibetan tables, so you sit on the bed, and then in front there was this table with the drawers. He opened up a drawer and he saw jewelry. And without thinking twice, he takes the jewelry to steal it. And as he had the jewelry in his hand, he said, what am I doing? I shouldn't be stealing. I mean, okay, here it's easy. They'll never think that it's the monk, but I shouldn't be doing this. So what would we have done, most of us, if we had realized that we were doing something wrong? Or we say, okay, once what's going to happen, or we just, put back and close the drawer, and, nothing happens instead. What did he do? He took the jewels, and then he took his other arm and he started screaming, "There's a thief in the house! There's a thief in the house! Come right away! Ben Kungal is stealing." And they arrived, and so they came in and they saw him with the jewels in his hand and the other hand that was like holding the other, forearm. And they said, he's gone nuts. And he said, here's the thief, here's the thief. And they didn't understand too much, but what did he do? He realized that he had a non-correct attitude, and so he wasn't punishing himself, but to not allow that mind to come back, he did this. And at the same time, he was able to apply the antidote, this attachment of image, I'm the good monk. So he was able to go beyond these two aspects. So what happens is that we all have our own habits of thinking and doing, etc. We need to be careful to not give too much space to these thoughts when they arise. Every once in a while, we need to say, no, this one I don't follow. This is my limit. And every once in a while, we should do something to give a clear sign to ourselves. Nobody else needs to know about it. And I repeat, it has nothing to do with punishing ourselves. It's not like, I need to punish myself because I thought this. No, I don't want to nourish. I don't want to feed that feeling. I don't want to feed that attitude. And so I'm going to do something that gives me a clear sign that will keep me from repeating that as a memory, let's say. So some memory came to thought. I can even say there's nothing wrong. It's not the best example though, but when there's something physical, a direct experience that's like relative to a certain habit that can help change that habit. When I would write in Portuguese, I was in the monastery of Serra. Every once in a while, when I would write, often I wouldn't put the accents. So I'd finish the write. I'd finish writing the whole word, and then I'd go back and put the accents. And sometimes I'd forget. And then, so the one who was teaching me says, no, you need to put the accents as you're writing the word. And I said, okay, but I had the habit of doing the opposite. And then one day this person stood behind me, and as I wrote something, every time I wrote something, if I skipped the accent, if I forgot it, he would give me a slap on the head the first time, and the second time, the third time, the fourth time. I didn't make any more mistakes, and I didn't make that mistake. I didn't make that mistake any more. No, I don't think it's the right way to teach, because then one has resentment and and then things much worse than the missing accents can happen. But if we give a kind of sign, something material, not just mentally, when we're in front of the experience like this, then it stays, like a memory. Like this master who, when he saw this attitude he had, instead of eating, he just turned his bowl over and says, no, today I'm not going to eat. Not as a punishment, but as a sign, a signal to himself to say, I'm not going to repeat that mental attitude anymore. So we should be careful to not let certain habits and thoughts win over us. Do not let them have the victory over us. And there's another aspect that comes with that, which is that every once in a while, even when we know that our behavior is not correct, but we don't want to let go, because it's as if we are giving the victory to something else. And this reminds me some time ago, maybe a year, 2 years, I don't know. There there was a moment some time ago where I found myself in a situation where there was a certain conflict, quite quite serious, difficult to face. And I spoke a lot with Rinpoche. It wasn't a conflict that had to do with me, but I was somehow involved. And I spoke to Rinpoche. He too was involved, and he also looked for situations. We thought here and there, we do like this, we should do like that. In the end, after having spoken for quite a while, I said, okay, what if we do like this? Rinpoche said, yes, okay. But so even if I had gotten to, okay, this is what we're going to do, inside I could feel that somehow inside it wasn't going to actually resolve the situation. And so I was coming down from the Labrang, Rinpoche's house, and the center, and I was going towards the center, and while I was in the middle of the woods, there were the trees, a verse came to me. One of the 8 verses of mental of mind training. May I take the defeat onto myself and offer the victory to the other. And I saw that the best way to resolve that situation was to offer the victory to the other. Because sometimes it wasn't that in that case, but sometimes we stay in a conflict because we just want to be right. Not because it's what resolves the best, or it's the best for everyone. Sometimes we even get to a point where the object of disaccord is lost. I mean, it has nothing to do with that anymore. I mean, the point is who's right, and one needs to show somehow that he's right. He needs to actually to win. The situation. They show that they are worth more. And so it's interesting because there's just a game of attraction and aversion where the object of the conflict is lost and really has no more importance. It's a little bit similar. It's not the best example, but it's a little bit like today's politics, which is not based on social politics or the government's plans. It's based on attraction and aversion. That's it. For me, regardless of someone's political leaning or the color of their underwear, what do I care? What's important to me is the program that a government has that they're going to bring to fruition. I mean, what the people do in their personal life. What do I care? But instead, this manipulation at very low level is used. This attraction aversion. Like the enemy of your friend. That just pulls us all in. Anyway, this isn't the topic of tonight. But very often we let ourselves be taken by these dynamics. This dynamics of the friend and the enemy and the aversion and attraction, where the main point is just to be right, and one tries to justify. It needs to be right. An interesting exercise that I had to do that time. It wasn't immediate. It took me a little bit, and to elaborate inside me was to detach myself, or detach my will, my ego, my idea of needing to be right, and think about what the best solution was for that situation, without going into but the other one should recognize. what the other one should do. I mean, who am I to impose on to the other? It would be better if the other one could understand this and have this kind of feeling. Yeah, I agree too. But are you able to make that person to feel like this or think like this? I'm not able to have that influence over this person, and neither you. So let's just relax. And let's see what we can do in front of a situation like this. And sometimes, when we're very attached to being right, independently of whether, according to our own logic, we're right or not, because being right, how can I say, following our own values, our principles, our logic, and being right, and then this necessity of being right because of our pride. Those are two separate things. And I ask myself often, in front of us in this situation, what is the best solution that we can apply, thinking mid and long term? It's not about, oh, poor guy, let's give him the victory. No, it's not about that. It's about acting in the most beneficial way, and without holding on to our own will, our attachment to our ego and pride, and being right, because conflicts and problems exist in the lives of all of our lives. When I think of Lama Gangchen Rinpoche, I mean, he didn't have an easy life. There were many times in his life where he had many difficulties, but I never saw him attached to the problem. A little bit, it's similar to when we put something in our mouths that has a bad taste. What should we do if you put something in your mouth that has a bad taste? You should swallow or spit it out. Don't do as I've seen in Tibet, like in our own group, in our in our Western group. Don't do like with the Tibetan cheese. And they were doing this trip with hours and hours in the bus, and at a certain point, we would stop, and the villagers would come to greet us and offer their best, get their blessings, and they would bring with them this cheese from Dri. Dri is the female of a yak, and so the little cubes that they would attach on a kind of neck on a string, and they would offer to everyone. And then, so imagine, a Tibetan of a small village talking to a Milanese, someone from Milan. I mean, there wasn't much to say, but there was this, from Milan or from Brazil, let's say, someone from a very different culture, and so they would, very very well-mannered people, they would accept the cheese and say thank you. And I would see that like 4 hours later, our group, the people would be just eating this cheese. They would still have it stuck in the mouth, and they'd keep it like on one side of the mouth and then move it to the other side, because they're hard as rocks. And I saw actually that they're using this like they're using it to help dogs to strengthen their teeth. So how they make this cheese? I've eaten it a couple of times. They put it in water like for half a day to then be able to eat it. So I saw these people, because they were well mannered, they put the cheese in the mouth, and they weren't able to spit. And I would say to them, if you keep that in your mouth, you're going to go back to Italy. You get back to Italy with that piece of cheese still in your mouth. It's not going to melt, And then they were okay. So they felt they could spit it out. Another antidote that reminds me is once it was my my birthday in Beijing. I've told this story a couple times, and I needed to stay a little bit longer in Beijing. It was my birthday, and I wanted to go to the holy places. And a friend of mine said, "Tomorrow I can't bring you to dinner, even though it's your birthday, because I have a very important business dinner, and I can't get out of it." And I said, "Oh, okay, thank goodness," because he had taken me out so many times, and I just really I didn't want to have another huge Chinese dinner, and so instead I wanted to spend the day in the holy places, and then my plan was to go back to the hotel. I was going to order pizza. I had figured out also how to order pizza in the hotel. So what happened though is at a certain point, the driver of this friend of mine, he says, "You have to come because there's trifang, and trifang means hunger. It means to eat." And then I say, no, I'm going to eat later. He says, no, we need to go, trifang. And then at a certain point, he takes me to this this restaurant that had 5 or 6 stories. It looked like kind of like the different realms of existence, and every floor was like its own restaurant, like a different level. So like the ground floor was like almost fast food. It was just absolutely full. And then as you went up, it became more chic. And then very at the very top, there was like individual rooms with private cooks and private tables and couches. And so I was in one of these rooms by myself, not understanding what was going on. At a certain point, 3 Chinese people arrived who didn't speak any English, and then they said, hello, ni hao, ni hao. And so I thought, oh, okay, it must have been the dinner with my friend. After like an hour with them, I realized that, they're very, very nice. They came also with a kata, making offerings to me. After about an hour of conversation, I understood they were friends of my friends. And so my friend had said, you know, since I can't take you out to dinner, I'll send someone who can take you out for your birthday. And so at a certain point, they show me in the menu, there were these pictures. There was a plate. It was really expensive. Everything was very expensive. But anyway, he said, no, this is really good. They said maybe the smell is not so good, but its taste is really good. So for good manners, someone offers you something, you accept it. And so they brought me, so these mushrooms come, and without exaggerating, when this plate of mushrooms came to me, the image that came to me the image that came to me was like a room filled with smelly shoes without any windows. It smelled so badly that I thought, I can't send this plate away. That would just be a great lack of respect. But the longer this plate stays in front of me, the longer I'll have to smell this. So better eat. I thought better to eat quickly. So I took it and I ate it all very quickly. I just threw it down my throat. And then they asked me, "Oh, you want some more? You want some more?" And then they were. So these 2 anecdotes remind me of certain situations where you're in a situation where you're not well. Maybe at work you fight with someone, or you don't get along with somebody. So what do? You take that person that you don't get along with, and then you take that person home for dinner, and then you take that person actually to bed with you. Because you get home, and what do? You talk about that person. You go to sleep and you're thinking about that person. You go on vacation, you're even thinking about that person. Instead, if we're in a situation that we don't like, and we're upset, or doesn't work for us, remember, you need to we're going to find ourselves in situations that are not pleasurable. I've already seen Rinpoche in a situation where there was a very formal lunch, and it would have been great lack of respect to not eat something. He never ate garlic, for example. Instead, there was this plate that was like almost all garlic, and he ate it without, making any without making a face. And they brought me a soup, saying, this soup is a little bit spicy, but it's really good. So I don't have a problem with spicy food, but when I touched the bowl to my mouth, it just on my lips, not even hadn't even touched my tongue, it started to burn. And Rinpoche never ate spicy food. Instead, Rinpoche just took the whole thing and gave a big smile. I mean, without even give any kind of grimace. Then we got into the car. He asked for 2 sodrol dashel, which is the Tibetan pill to help for stomach ache. He didn't say, he didn't complain about the food. Instead, how are we? What would we do? We'd say, oh, look at that food. I hate it so much. It was so bad for me, etc. No. Instead, he just asked for 2 sodrol dashel. He didn't make any other comment about it of any kind. So what happens is, this necessity we have to verbalize things just actually increases our aversion. It increases our malaise. So when we're in a situation that we don't like, the ideal thing is to swallow and digest, but not keep it in our mouths, on one side and the other side, and then back at the other side of our mouths. Because, life goes on, things go on, and situations transform, but we continue. So what do we want to bring along with us? The point that I want to get to how can I say? I see many people, whose life is going by. Life goes by for all of us. I see people close who get sick, and in this period of COVID, so much more. People who are a little sick, very, very sick. People who survive, people who don't. People who survive, but whose lives are changed drastically. Other sicknesses, great changes, related, familial changes, work changes, all kinds. And the conditions that we have in this present moment are not going to last forever, for none of us. Life is in constant movement, constant transformation. And we set objectives, goals for ourselves. And often we can lose ourselves in the tool as if that were the end. Let me give you a metaphor. I want to take an important trip. I want to go to Kailash, which is the example I always use because it is a place I want to go. So I set this goal to go to Mount Kailash, and I look at the itinerary, which is something that I have done. And I think I thought, I've even programmed the whole itinerary, mapped out the itinerary in by car. Even thinking, okay, by the time I get, I'll go by car, and then I'll gift the car to the monastery, because I won't want to do all of those kilometers. Also coming back, I'll fly home back, and so it had my own film, let's say, about arriving in Mount Kailash by car. But anyway, so let's say I set this goal of going to Mount Kailash to go by car. I need a good car, so I look for the right car, and I become an expert in cars that would be most suitable for a long trip. So I become an expert in these kinds of cars, and let's say that I'm able to buy a car like this, and I'm so happy with the car that I start showing people my car and showing how beautiful it is, and I forget that I wanted to go to Mount Kailash. And I spend the rest of my life around this car, and I make this car my life. So I need to take good care of the car. And yes, I need to go to Mount Kailash, but not now. So then the objective becomes having the car and not going to Mount Kailash. I forget about that. This metaphor is clear, isn't it? So if we talk about our spiritual path, there are three vehicles that we can choose. The first vehicle is the Hinayana. The second is called Mahayana. And the third is called Vajrayana. But let's remember, they are vehicles, and the function of a vehicle is to bring us somewhere. And sometimes we get close to teachings, we get close to the philosophy and techniques of meditation, or mantras and prayers, sacred images, to the many things that exist, to the many marvelous things that exist. But we become experts in philosophy, experts in the meditation techniques. We become, but at a certain point, there's this danger that it's like having this car and not remembering that we wanted to go somewhere, because the life then turns all around that. We should never forget where we want to go. So better to go in the right direction with your Fiat Panda instead of waiting for the Maserati, or having a Maserati and not going anywhere. I mean, better to use what you have to walk in the right direction. This is important. And what is this direction? We can summarize it in different ways, but one way is, first and foremost, is to understand that our main goal that we have, independently of being Buddhist or not, is that we want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. That's it. And it's like this for everyone, from an ant to the great philosopher. We don't want to suffer, and we want to be well. And there are those who are well by helping others be well, and that's another level. But there's this attraction to being well, and aversion to suffering. This is at the basis of all of us. When we enter the spiritual path, one of the starting points is to accept and see deep inside of us, not just conceptually, that our objective of happiness, and so the non-sufferance, because happiness and non-suffering are two sides of the same coin. It doesn't depend on external circumstances, but on internal conditions. We are not the victim of anything or anyone. Sorry if I'm so strong and direct. And some would say, oh, but if you knew what has happened to me, I'm sure that we all have lived difficult situations, some more, some less, and many of these situations were not wanted, and often we live difficult situations and we don't understand why they're happening. And they seem unjust, and we don't understand why we need to live that situation. But for me, there's something very clear. Regardless of the situation, what determines of whether that situation generates suffering or not is not the object experience, but the actual subjective experience of the person. What determines the suffering in a situation is not what happens objectively, the forms and colors and sounds, etc., but the subjective experience of the person who's living it. In each one of us, when we're faced with a situation, that situation resounds something inside of us. When it touches a weak point, we suffer. I've said this many times, but it's something that I've understood just a short time ago. I mean, observing myself, I saw that there are certain situations that are difficult, but that I face without any kind of suffering. They don't bother me more than anything else. It doesn't take away my peace or well-being, even if I'm facing complex and difficult situations, and there are other situations, let's say objectively, they're less difficult, but they touch unresolved conflicts or some kind of wounds inside, and so that awakens something, and awakens some kind of pain. One then lives that situation with suffering. So the starting point is my suffering, and the suffering of others doesn't come from objective situations, but mainly depends on the subjective way that each person lives that situation. And I don't mean to take away the responsibility of the actions of anybody. It's clear that a person who is violent and acts with aggression contributes a lot, to the suffering of others. And I mean, everyone is responsible for his own actions, but in the ultimately, if there's something that I'm not able to live well, it's because there's something inside that is generating that reaction. At the beginning, maybe we need to move away from situations that cause this suffering, but we need to work on being able to transform ourselves inside, so that we can face any situation without losing our inner state of peace. Until I'm able to do that, then certain situations, it's better to move away from them, because I don't have the maturity and the to be able to face them without suffering. When talking about the suffering, when talking about the all-permeating suffering, which means as long as the mind and body are polluted by mental defilements and by karma, there will be suffering. And in front of this, I mean, my objective becomes reaching a state of peace that allows me to live in harmony, live the situations I live harmoniously. And then, so this is put into many contexts, very accessible to all of us. And in the Vajrayana path, vehicle, it uses forms and images to help us understand that which doesn't have a form. Also because our mind has different ways of working, but there's one very strong, which is the conceptual, logical comprehension, and then there's another part that has to do with experience. The experiences speak much louder than concepts. They're both important, but an experience is much stronger, and through images, through symbolism, symbols, through visualizations, we induce experiences onto ourselves, and gradually we transform. Now, as an objective, our objective is not to know the philosophy well. It's not to know the meditation techniques, but to transform ourselves inside and know the teachings. Knowing philosophy, knowing how to meditate. These are tools to reach that. And in all of the schools of Vajrayana, and Lama Gangchen showed us even more clearly. He showed us the families of the 5 Dhiani Buddhas. Here in Albagnano, we have these 108 mandalas, but any mandala we take, not all, but the great majority of them, they're divided into 5 colors. In the east, it's usually white. White is east, the south is yellow, west is red, and north is green, and the center is blue. Sometimes the blue and the white is inverted, but in more or less it's like this. These colors have a meaning, many meanings. They are represented also by the so-called the 5 Dhiani Buddhas. Mostly what the colors represent, the symbolism, the Buddha families, etc. They are the inner qualities that we should develop. I mean, in other words, who do I want to become? What is inside of me that would be better to overcome? What is harmful to me that I should diminish? I mean, it's a guideline to help us. That gives us a blueprint. A kind of map that shows us that, okay, you can be like this. And let's try to understand what they are a little bit. Because it's very important to understand that the 5 Dhiani Buddhas are not, it's not a god that we're praying to and asking for things, but these images, these symbols, these colors, they're showing us what we should develop, showing us where we should put our energy. So we can start in a different order, but let's follow the order that Lama Gangchen gave us in self-healing. So it starts with the north, which starts in the lower part of our body, like the secret chakra refers to Buddha Amoghasiddhi. So we have fear and jealousy. What does that mean? I mean, how do we apply this into our daily life? Not just in meditation, which is very important too. Fear, which is also linked to uncertainty. I do, I do or don't do, it is or it isn't, that generates anxiety. So we have jealousy and envy, which are two that have, these are two feelings that have a very strong destructive power. Even if, I think they're just really stupid feelings. But it's not that our feelings have a logic to them. Just generally speaking, mental defilements, they're really stupid. If you look at the logic behind them, you say to yourself, you're really stupid. Because with jealousy, let's start with envy. Envy, what is envy? Okay, I would like to have something that you have. So I have aversion towards you because you have something that I want. And so I'm even worse. Not only do I not have that thing, I'm also feeling bad. Jealousy is I'm afraid of losing something or someone that I believe I possess. And if someone is jealous of us, does that get us closer to that person, or does that create a rift between us? Is it pleasurable when you feel jealousy from someone? No. So out of jealousy, to not lose, I create a rift. That's really smart, isn't it? I don't want to lose that person. I want to be with that person. And so what do? I just drive them crazy. And then basically I push them away. But it's stronger than reason. Anger. Anger is, there's this situation and is bad for me. I don't want to have this. I don't want to live this situation for me, and I don't want to experience this this situation anymore. So I react with aggression to destroy that object. So to not suffer, I suffer even more because through anger I generate other conflicts and a negative interdependence and other conflicts, etc. So at the basis of anger, there's a desire to not suffer. But to not suffer, I'm suffering even more. Even dissatisfaction and attachment, if we looked well, they're just stupid feelings. Because at the end of the day, when I have attachment and desire towards something, in reality, what is it that I want? Not the object, but that inner sensation of satisfaction and well-being. And it's desire itself that takes that feeling away from me. Because if I'm happy with what I have, then if we allowed ourselves, we would be able to enjoy things in an incredible way. It makes me think of the movie Forrest Gump. Oh wow, everything's so nice, everything rose. We could enjoy things really well, but no, at a certain point it's not enough, and it's not enough. I want something else, but what I really want is a sense of satisfaction. Anyway, jealousy, envy, fear, independently of the fact that we're able to understand and see the mechanisms, we're not able to stop them. So, with an objective, I don't want to have those feelings, and instead I need to put my mindfulness into acting with the antidotes. And this is an important point. We need to put energy in the antidote, not in blaming the mental defilement, because I see this habit among all of us is that, we come from an education where there's a strong sense of guilt And when we start studying Buddhism a little bit more, we start feeling guilty for having attachment or anger, or because we're selfish, etc. As if by feeling guilty for being jealous, as if that would help the situation or help us not have feelings of jealousy. So it's not enough to recognize that feeling is not correct. The energy should be put towards the antidote, towards the light. So we look at the 5 Dhiani Buddhas, the colors, they represent the mental defilements that should be transformed, but they represent the positive side, the beautiful side. So we have certainty, stability understood as a non-doubt, this power of realization, and the joy for the happiness of others. Another aspect that's very important here is called the all-accomplishing wisdom, which means having certainty in every action. And we need to try to find this certainty in our actions, in the small actions, and to diminish these doubts. And someone would say to me, "Oh, this is all nice, but how can I do all this?" One important thing is that when these habits come out, when these attitudes come out, they don't come out right away. I mean, every once in a while, yes, but often they come out slowly, and you have time to perceive it. It's like the Geshe who saw his mind of attachment and judgment and the food, and he said, "No, I don't want to follow that thought. So today I'm not going to eat," just to give a sign to myself that I'm not going to go in this direction. Because to understand this well, we should talk about something, another subject that's quite long, which I don't want to look at now. But the question is, what am I? And we would see that we're a lot of things, but we are a flow of thoughts and feelings. I'm not that thought. I am not anger. I am not jealousy. I am not envy. I am not generosity or love. I am a flow. And within which many emotions come, many feelings come. And what I need to do, and gradually, what I should do is to not follow some, and to induce and follow others. And I'm sure that each one of us has his own stories, and the mental defilements come out, and we shouldn't feel guilty for that. But we should try with awareness to act and follow act with the antidotes, apply the antidotes. This is what's important, and a fundamental point when we talk about Buddha Mogassiddhi is to rejoice. Apparently in Italian that word doesn't exist as a verb, to rejoice. So it's like let's just invent the word. In English it exists, to rejoice. In Portuguese, regocijar. Sorry. In Italian, apparently it doesn't exist. But anyway, it's this ability to feel joy for the positive things of others, and it's an enormous power of healing. Has enormous healing power. And it doesn't come spontaneously, unfortunately. Every once in a while, yes, but when it's maybe has something to do with your friend, but normally it's not so spontaneous or easy. But we need to put energy. We need to try to concentrate. It's like detaching our own sense of self and allowing ourselves to see the other. Often our fear is linked to this obsession of self gratification. So and our selfishness. So rejoicing opens the door to seeing the other, to connecting with the other and going beyond this attachment to self that I have so strong, and it generates a lot of positive energy. So it's an exercise that we should do. It's not just Om Moga Siddhi Hum, which is wonderful, but it's the fact of applying, applying this rejoicing to situations where there is envy or jealousy or fear. Then we get to Ratnasambhava. It's yellow in color in the south. Ratnasambhava represents going beyond our arrogance. The symbol is the horse, which is found in our navel chakra. The horse is said to be an animal that is very proud, and I have nothing against horses, because people have said, oh, you don't like animals because you throw in your visualizations, you throw out animals. No. It's just that these are symbols to help us connect to things that don't have form. At the secret chakra and for Amoga Siddhi, the symbol that represents our mental defilements is the Garuda. The Garuda is like a great eagle, mythological eagle. He's the king of all the birds. So why would that represent fear and jealousy and envy? One, because even if this great Garuda bird is the king of all the birds, is always fearful of losing his position, because the one who doesn't have anything is not afraid of losing anything because it doesn't have anything. And then there's also the question of, like, as a consequence, is always comparing himself to others. So this creates insecurity. Ratnasambhava instead is connected to the symbol of the horse. Once I saw that in competitions where they use in the jumping competitions, if a horse makes a mistake, the way to punish the horse is to have the horse go by in front of the public with his head down. So, and that's like the worst for the horse, to have to bow down his head. So this is the horse is also the attachment to our own image, to our own image and our pride. And then there's also then it's also connected to being miserly. So I don't know if horses are miserly, but if you give food to a horse, you should do it with your fist closed. Otherwise, he'll bite your fingers off. But this arrogance and pride is the mind that needs to compare to others to see himself, and looks for someone weaker to feel stronger. So arrogance is based on a reference point of something that I feel it is important. I mean, I'm better than you because I'm more beautiful. I'm better than you because I'm stronger, because I'm the more humble. I'm better than you because I'm more spiritual. I'm better than you because I have more knowledge. I'm better than you because, for whatever reason, as I heard Roberto Benigni say once, when he made the commentary on the Divine Comedy, and at a certain point he said, humbleness is the most difficult of all qualities, because as soon as you recognize that you're humble, you're no longer humble. And arrogance is this feeling of feeling superior when one needs to compare himself to others. It's subtle. And there's an important difference and there's an important difference between having a good self-esteem and feeling superior. Self-esteem is where I recognize my qualities. I recognize the beautiful opportunities that I have. And I rejoice for the beautiful things that I have, which is wonderful. But I'm not comparing myself to anyone else. And I am not going to set myself as being superior to anyone. Arrogance comes from this comparison to others. And by comparing ourselves to someone else, then a sense of superiority arises. Where there's arrogance, we can't learn anything. It's said that says in the valley of humbleness, the water of the teachings is going to help grow the flowers of realizations. Well, instead on the summit of arrogance, the water of the teachings just flows down and we lose it. So we do have this feeling of arrogance. So when we see someone, do we judge, based on how they're dressed, based on the color of their skin, on how they look, on where they are, or their behavior? Do we judge or not? There are two moments that I want to share with you. Once I was in Nepal. I was about 16, 17 years old, and I was alone. I was alone in this restaurant called Fire and Ice, which is a great pizzeria. It's the only place I knew in all of Nepal and India where you could eat a really good pizza. Anyway, there was this Neapolitan lady, Anna Maria, who opened up this great pizzeria. Anyway, so I was there in this restaurant eating a pizza, and there were two tables away. There were two men. One who was Western, and the other one looked kind of Japanese, and they both were in jacket and tie. They were dressed really well, which is something that is not very common to see in Kathmandu, and they were there eating. And I was watching them, and for a second, I had this thought of like, oh, these poor guys, taken by this mundane life. And I saw that I had this attitude of a certain arrogance, because I'm spiritual, I'm better than they are. And as I thought this, a bee came to me, and this bee started flying around me, I got a little bit scared. It was this bee that came so close, and then the bee went towards these two men, and it went all the way around them, and these men were absolutely still. And that attitude, that moment just showed me, who am I to say who the other is? I mean, look at me. Look at me. Hey, me, I'm feeling more better. feeling better without even knowing who these people are. And I thank this bee that showed something inside me, this fact of judging or comparing. Like another time instead, I was in a place, I've told this story many times because it really touched me deeply. I was at the sea. I was on the beach, a little bit far from everywhere, and I wanted to drink coconut. And I found someone along the road who was selling coconut, but it cost so much. But I mean, it was really expensive, and I thought, well, but I mean, it cost so much, and I really wanted. When I said, okay, I'll take it. I mean, when I say a lot, I mean here it would be a lot less. But anyway, then I get to this beach, really far, so far from everything. There was a man selling coconut, and I think, oh, this must cost so much. But I asked, but instead it costs very little. I mean, really, the right amount. And I started talking to this man, and I found a person that transmitted peace with stability, dignity, just marvelous, with an incredible humility. And I was deeply touched by this man. He was really dark, maybe 50, 60 years old, 50 or 60 years old. He was joyous and content, and he showed this joy with stability and dignity and kindness. I mean, it was very special, and it really deeply touched me. And it was and by coincidence, when I asked him his name was Michel, because there are not that many men that are named Michel. Maybe Michael or Michele. And we were far. It was nothing. It had nothing to do with France or French language. But when we allow ourselves to connect without judging, we can really see the other. We can really learn. And I learned so much from this man. I have a deep gratitude for this man, just in that exchange of me drinking the coconut water. But instead, when we arrive with preconceived ideas based on how one is dressed or not dressed, I mean, that already blocks so much. But we don't know who we have in front of us, really. So it's important to compare less. I mean, try to have our own identity that doesn't depend on what others think or not, and try to judge less those we have in front of us, even those we think we know well. Because in reality, we don't know who we have in front of us. So arrogance, miserliness, this not wanting to share what we have, a miserliness, comes from an attitude that comes from an obsession of self-gratification. I mean, miserliness is a clear manifestation of not being able to see the other. I don't share with you because I exist, and that's it. Arrogance generates tension. Miserliness generates tension. And on the other side, we have humbleness. Humbleness not understood as a feeling inferior, but humbleness understood like not putting ourselves as superior or inferior, or not. We're not comparing. I respect you, you respect me. I respect myself. And it's beautiful because a person who has this kind of humility, humbleness, gets along with anybody, regardless of the context. The more superior I feel to one, the more inferior I'll feel to another. But one then would need to impose his own person as very tiresome. Obviously, these are not. If I want to be like a Buddha Amoghasiddhi or a Buddha Ratnasambhava, generous, it's even in the tantric vows, it's said to practice the 4 generosities 6 times a day. It's not for nothing. What are these four generosities? To give materially, give love, give protection, so to help someone avoid a suffering, and to give the Dharma. I don't know how many times a week do we practice these generosities with mindfulness, without talking about 6 times a day. Why do we say practice of the generosity? Because generosity is the basis for being able to generate positive energy, the so-called merits. Even as St. Francis said, it's by giving that we receive. And it's through generosity that we can generate a positive energy, the causes, to be able to then reach better states of consciousness and grow as people, and to reach a state of peace ourselves. So sharing and giving is a quality that's extremely important. That doesn't come spontaneously. It's something that we need to cultivate. It's something that I learned with Rinpoche, Lama Gangchen Rinpoche. There's this joy of giving. I also learned that there's a generosity of knowing how to receive. Because when someone gives us something, we need to know how to receive it. There's sometimes people have great desire to give, but have a hard time receiving, because receiving something means that I'm going to be indebted to you, and I have this commitment with myself. What is given to me, what is offered to me, I receive it. There was only one time that I remember that someone gave me something that I didn't know how to manage. It was in Milan, and it was this man came and he says, "I want to give you something." And he said, "I have something for you. I have 2 rabbits." And I thought, what am I going to do now? How can I take 2 rabbits home? Where am I going to put these rabbits? How am I going to manage these? And there was actually a couple of rabbits, like male, female rabbits. He had a lot of rabbits, and he'd even given them names. And I didn't know what to do, and I said, "Okay, I accept your gift with one condition, that you take care of them." So, but they're my rabbits, but at your house. And he said, "Okay." We gave them names, and then they stayed at his house. And then I don't know what happened to these rabbits, but when we receive something, at least for me, very often what's most beautiful is not the object that you receive, but that exchange that comes. It's a sign of love that's given from one person to another. Being able to share. When we give, often it's a way to manifest our joy and our gratitude. I saw that Rinpoche gave an enormous value not to the objects, but to the feelings, with which objects were given, and the object then represented those feelings. So sharing, giving, is something that we can all do. And if we want to follow this path, it's something we have to do. The first practice of the first paramita, the first perfection is generosity. It's the easiest. It's material generosity. And then we need to open up our hearts and give love to anybody. Once I was in Milan, all these stories are coming to me. I had just arrived from Tibet. This was an experience an experience that was important, that helped me understand other people, because we judge others through our own experiences. And so, at this time, I arrived from this trip. I had a lot of suitcases. I had 2 big trolleys, and I had and in one trolley there was my personal belongings, and then so a couple people had come to pick me up, and at a certain point I look around and they were gone. I couldn't find them, and I thought, where did they park? Which parking lot? And I go back, I waited about 10 minutes where we were before. So, and just basically, I got lost in Malpensa airport. I didn't have my phone and I didn't have any money. I tried to go around. I had enormous suitcases, and my logic was, I know the number of the house of Rinpoche, so I'll ask to borrow. I'll ask to borrow the phone, of somebody's phone, call the house, and then have them call the people to come and pick me up there. It seemed really easy, but I couldn't find anybody to lend me their phone. I mean, I don't think I look like a gangster, and I didn't have any kind of aggressive attitude. But even energetically, when you go towards someone because you need something, I've found that most people were just closed. They were unsure. Then somebody would say, "Okay, fine, but I'll dial the number." And this was even before coronavirus. And then after 45 minutes, I was able, and it really was difficult. And what I realized, and I'm really grateful for this experience, but I saw how, I'm just this experience of needing help, but being absolutely invisible when nobody's helping. And this really made me reflect a lot. I mean, there are people, because of various conditions, they have a lot of needs, but nobody sees them. Then I remembered now, a few years later, I was in the airport, and there was this boy who he looked a little bit lost, and he lost his flight. He didn't have money for a hotel, and so we took him to Albagnano. And Albagnano, we said, okay, the following day someone will go and take you back to the airport. At another time, there was someone at the airport because this she was absolutely desperate because she needed to pay something, but her credit card wasn't working, and nobody could help her. But when we allow ourselves to help someone, it feels deep inside of us comes great joy. But to help other people, we need to allow ourselves to see see the others. And this is something that we need to put into practice daily, no matter where we are, at work or at a restaurant, or well, we don't go to restaurants so much anymore, but wherever we are. Regardless of the context in which we find ourselves. For example, even in this period of lockdown, one example would be calling a call center. I've done this many times. You know, when you call a call center and they keep you on the line for hours, and then you need to. You talk to someone, they don't give you the right information, or they send you to the wrong person, But as you're on the phone, be kind. Try to really see the other person on the line, or for example, if someone calls you to sell you something or change your utility company. And I see that there's a certain attitude, a spontaneous, automatic attitude to feel like, just don't bother me. Instead, I always try to recognize that there's a person on the other line, and I'm sorry that this person needs to do this job. So, hello. Have a good day. I'm sorry, but this is, but I don't need this product, or just not to be so formal, but just to be friendly as a way to give love to the other person. So, if we see in our daily lives, there are many opportunities where we can practice generosity. Even maybe. Even someone who calls you to sell you something that you don't need, simply being kind to that person is a way of giving love. You're putting into practice your commitments. So, do I want to, or do I not want to be a generous person? Yes. So we put into practice Ranasambhava. The exercise of not comparing ourselves to others is also a marvelous exercise. This exercise requires also a part that it is where we ask ourselves who we are, and we see that a big part of who we are is a conclusion based on what others think of us. And that's just a huge trap. So an important point is to develop our own inner stability, where I don't depend on what my being doesn't depend on what other people think of me. I'm a flow of thoughts and feelings and actions. So I need to act and think in the way that I think is the most positive, most beneficial. Then we have Buddha Akshobhya at our heart, blue in color. So to overcome hate and anger and resentment and aggression. We all have different feelings that come out, but I want to be like Akshobhya, so I don't give room to those feelings. I want to develop love, compassion, stability. Stability means, come what may, I don't lose my direction, I don't lose my sense of peace. Because many of us, as Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva Charavattara, when he asks, what is more important to you, your inner peace or what others think of you? And our answer, a rhetorical answer, would be inner peace. my inner peace. And then Shantideva asked, if your inner peace is more important to you than the image that others have of you, then why do you lose your inner peace when people talk badly about you? So if my inner peace is too important for me, and I'm not going to lose it because you said this or you did that, I'm not going to give space to that. It's too important for me to maintain my inner peace, our stability. Our stability is about having clarity of where we want to go and what we're doing, and we don't allow ourselves to be taken by other thoughts that would unbalance this peace. It's not easy. It's not easy to be when we're taken by the attachment to power or aversion. Instead, we need to keep clear what our values and principles are, and remember why we do what we do, and stay there. So if I want to be like Akshobhya, it means I need to cultivate love, stability, joy. Then we see Buddha Amitabha. We have dissatisfaction and unlimited attachment, unlimited desire, and as a consequence, a lack of concentration, the mind that goes in the 10 directions and even more. Violent speech. And on the other side, there's satisfaction, few desires, concentration, pure speech. And the last we have Virochana, is the white in color, which represents ignorance. So is where we eliminate our ignorance, which is an incoherence between reality and what we see, and the development of wisdom on an experiential level. Now, with these images, these colors, we need them as guidelines to say, who do I want to be? So, beyond anything else, I want to have stability. I want to be joyous. I want to rejoice for the well-being of others. So I need to put energy into all that because problems happen every day. And sometimes I hear people say, and then I got upset. Well, good, you got upset now. Then it's finished, right? I mean, you said it in the past tense, so then it's over. So let's just move on. Or do you want to stay upset? Because if you like being upset, then stay upset and keep complaining. I mean, what do we want to nourish? To whom do we want to give the victory? Have clarity. What do I want? What feelings do I want to develop inside? Who do I want to be? And let's remember that the teachings and philosophy, meditation, mantras, sacred images, all of this, these are instruments to help us develop all of this. But where we want to go needs to always be very clear. We can't get lost with the vehicle. We need to have clarity of where we're going. Today I was reading a text of Panchen Gyatsen, which is the debate between wisdom and ignorance, and at a certain point he says clearly it's ignorance that was speaking to wisdom and says, you think to send me away so easily, but look, it's even those who are wise and great practitioners and experts, at the end of the day, they're following me and not you, wisdom. And he gave some examples. And he gave one example and this unfortunately happens, that one gets lost in the middle of the pleasures and power and forgets the reason why he's doing what he's doing. At a certain point, it becomes more important to be a good Buddhist than to go towards enlightenment. I don't know if that's a clear example. What's more important, to be the good Buddhist, or to go towards enlightenment? It means to walk towards enlightenment. So to face our own mental defilements, familiarize ourselves with virtue, familiarize ourselves with a virtuous behavior, with generosity and generosity and morality and enthusiastic effort and patience and concentration and wisdom. Because remember, we're going to die sooner than we think. Excuse me if I'm so direct. And I'm not giving you an ultimatum like, I don't know. The truth is, I really don't know. Even as, I don't know when, even as I'm speaking and you're listening, in the inside of our mind, we're thinking, okay, maybe, but not. We're going to die, but maybe not now. But, and it's not for granted that one dies Buddhist and is reborn, is reborn Buddhist. There's not a special line for Buddhists. What's sure is that when someone dies, what one has generated in one's lifetime, good and bad, one takes that. He takes that with him, and so we don't have time to waste with all the mental defilements and the fears and the envy and the attachments. We don't have time to lose. We can say, it's like every once in a while it's happened to me it happened a couple times where I went to Rinpoche and I would say to him, just a couple times it happened, where I had a request for something that I knew he was going to say no to, and then it happened a couple times where I'd say, Rinpoche, what do you think about this? And he would say, after 2 years. But then I learned that when he said 2 years, when it's, I could understand when it was 2 years and it meant 2 years, or when it was a no that was meant in 2 years. And so we can do this with our mental defilements. Okay, the anger comes or jealousy comes. Okay, later. Now I don't have time for you, because now I don't have time to lose. We have an opportunity that's too special. We need to put our energy into positive things, and instead, when we come to a time when we're just overcome by sadness and anxiety and fear and anger and strong emotions, because this happens. Even if we don't want it, it can happen. Just remember that it will pass, and try to not react through those emotions, because they will pass. But once we've materialized or acted, then we give them a lot of strength. So with patience and love towards ourselves, we remind ourselves that those feelings will pass, and we try not to be overtaken by those emotions. This is what I wanted to bring to you today. Sincerely, I have a deep gratitude for all my masters, the whole lineage, all the way to Buddha Shakyamuni. And when I was younger, I was very small. I was very traditional, maybe even more than I am now. Somehow I was older when I was a child than now. Those who knew me as a child, they would say, oh, that I looked like I felt like an old person in a young boy's body. I was really boring. I was very traditional, very stuck on on traditions and respect. And for me today, what's very clear is I have a deep respect towards a tradition, and I see the value in the methods that we have, but it's a vehicle, it's a tool. Religion, in my case, the tradition that I feel, the Buddhist tradition, has an enormous value. It's just uncalculable. But religion in itself, in and of itself, in and for itself, it has no value. I can have the most wonderful car in the world, but if I don't have anywhere to go, it's useless. It's useful when I have a direction to go. Then it's marvelous because this car takes me to that place. It's like being in front of Google and not knowing what to type. I think it's happened to most of us. You have a universe behind that place, but you don't know what to write. You don't know what to search for. So it's important to remember that we should follow, as Atisha said, we should respect all traditions and follow with determination the one that you prefer. This is what I believe. I don't think that my tradition is the best or superior to another one. I don't know the others to be able to say I know this one, and with respect towards the others, I put my energy into this one. There's a sutra where Buddha explains, when you are on the bank of a river and you want to go to the other river bank, you need a boat. And there are many types of forms of boats, and each one finds the boat that it can find. But once you've managed to get to the other side of the river, you shouldn't stay attached to the boat. And one boat isn't better than the other. It's important to get to the other side of the river. The objective is to transcend our selfishness and our ignorance. Our objective isn't to be Buddhist. This is clear. So I thank all of you. Thank you for being here together with your heart open and your mind sharp. I hope, because we're here because we see the benefit in this, and the benefit of putting into practice. So the only thing I ask you is to try to the best of your ability to put into practice what you've heard. This is what I can ask you. Thank all of you. Now it's time for our dedications.
Lame kutse rapten chi namkar chinle chokchur gepada losan tempe drume sasum ki drove munsel taktu ne gyur chi kewa kuntu yanda lamadan dralme cheki pela longche ching Sada lamge yunte rabzone dorje change kopang nyur tobe sho nimo dele tsendele nime kuyan delekshin ninsen takto delekpe kuncho sumke jingilo kuncho sumke ngodrubotsol Concho sumke trashishu. All'alba o al tramonto, di notte o durante il giorno, possano i tre gioielli concederci le loro benedizioni, possano aiutarci ad ottenere tutte le realizzazioni e cospargere il sentiero della nostra vita con molti segni di buon auspicio. Buonanotte a tutti. Grazie.